Back in early 2017, I made a commentary-style video called Let's Talk About Tweening, where I shared my very scholarly and well-researched opinion on the topic of 2D animation. Since that video was uploaded, I've gone through almost 4 years of animation college and even spent a summer as a paid intern on a children's TV show that was 2D rigged. After going through all of that, I can now truly appreciate how difficult, time-consuming, labor-intensive, and skill-based rigged animation is. I now feel more qualified to discuss these topics and hopefully correct some of the mistakes they perpetuated back when I really didn't know shit about what I was talking about. Real quick, I wanted to let you guys know that Black Friday deals are on in my merch shop, and I've even made an exclusive t-shirt design of me as a cat girl for you weebs. And there's other cool stuff like stickers and buttons, so go check that out before the sale is over to help support me and my channel. So to start off, let's talk about what tweened animations actually are, as there are a lot of misconceptions on what tweening is. Tweening, short for in-betweening, is a kind of animation technique utilized by breaking up a character into multiple parts or layers, and manipulating them in a certain way to create the illusion of movement. It is most commonly used in cartoon shows or in animated media where a lot of content has to be put out at a very fast rate. The definition that I offered for tweening was misleading at best, but truthfully, it was just blatantly wrong. I incorrectly grouped all forms of non-hand-drawn animation in this self-defined category, which led to a lot of confusion and miscommunication in the comments. In actuality, tweening just refers to the intermediate frames generated between the start and stop frames of an animated sequence. This process is executed in several different ways throughout the many different mediums of animation, and serves as a method to smoothly transition one image into another. Hand-drawn, also called cell or traditional animation, is defined as an animation technique in which each frame is drawn by hand, as the name suggests. In this form, intermediate frames are drawn by hand and are not auto-generated by software. 2D rigs are comprised of vector drawings that are held together by a series of nodes and manipulated through the use of handles and pegs. 2D rigs are a really great tool to have because they're generally faster to work with and allow for consistent model accuracy, especially if you're working on a production with multiple animators. For 2D rigged animation, tweening is an essential aspect in obtaining a desirable finished product, and it ultimately comes down to the finesse and flair employed by the animator to make these animations feel more lifelike. After tweened frames are generated between key poses, a meticulous amount of planning, adjusting, and editing must be applied to these frames for it to look right. Tweening is merely a stepping stone in achieving believable and fluid animation, and it all relies on the tiny refinements made by the animator. The type of animation I attempted to define in my video did not describe 2D rigged animation, but instead referred to the use of vector-based images that were moved around and manipulated without the use of a rig. The characters in these animations were comprised of separate parts not connected by nodes, but still utilized the computer-generated aspect of tweening as seen in 2D rig. Because parts of a character were not held together by pegs or hierarchies, they tended to shift around and be inconsistent, which sometimes left the animation with a floaty or disjointed appearance. This technique often omits certain fundamentals of animation, such as squash and stretch, secondary and overlapping animation, eases, and the use of S&C curves. In my failing to properly define these terms, I had a lot of disenchanted people in my comments telling me that they gave up on animation entirely as a result of my video, which of course was never my intention. I actually feel really guilty and horrible that my opinion caused such an outcome. The general consensus taken from my argument was that rigged animation was not as valuable an art form as hand-drawn animation, and therefore I disliked or even hated tweened animation and those that did it. The purpose in making that video was only to clarify the reasons why I preferred traditional animation as opposed to rigged animation, which I was seeing a lot of in the animation meme community at the time. Looking back, my video was less an educational teaching moment and more an unnecessary criticism on new animators who were just starting out and hadn't yet developed their skills. I compared YouTube meme animators to people in the industry working on high-budget productions with access to character rigs and other programs not easily available to hobbyists. Putting that expectation on newer hobbyist animators and holding them to the same standard as professionals was wrong of me to do. Only now I realize that it's more than okay for people to animate however and whatever they'd like to for whatever reason they'd like, regardless of the perceived quality of the outcome or how it compares to other animators. Though it will always be the case that hand-drawn remains my preferred method of animation, it is not my place to decide whether or not other animation techniques are legitimate enough to be considered as such, and therefore good or bad. They are allowed to simply exist as what they are and remain valuable in and of themselves. Oh, and And Five Nights at Freddy's is an awesome fandom. Remember, kids, cringe culture is dead, so enjoy whatever you want regardless of what others think. Okay, talk soon. Toodles.